Good morning. I have to apologize for the timbre of my voice, but it's a little bit coarser than usual, so I have to get close to the mic. And I'd like myself to also thank Harris and Kai for putting this event together and giving me the opportunity to present my work to such a lovely audience. I guess it's okay. So I will within this talk I will talk about research that we've performed the last few years on Timbral Semantics, and I will try to squeeze three relatively recent publications on the subject within this talk. So hopefully I won't get over time. So semantics. Why do we even bother with semantics, or why may they be important? Sorry, it's going. Is anybody? It's going automatically without me pressing.
Are you in rehearsal mode? There's if you rehearse your presentation, then it records times you're changing, so you can disable it somewhere.
Yes, done this in the past. That's it. Okay, so
can I help you do that?
do you know how to do it quickly?
Go escape.
It's not doing it anymore. So, funnily enough, the term semantics comes from the Greek term σημασία, which stands for significance or importance of thing. And anyway, but since semantics concern the meaning of something, then any application that aspires to be called intuitive, intelligent, smart, whatever, should be benefited by using semantic terms. So, from sound processing, sound synthesis, to even queried by timbre qualities in the sound and music database, and any type of content analysis. So a little bit of background. Relational measures of timbre, as defined by Hackstaff, include classification. Timbre is studied by classification and relational measures. We focus on relational measures, but classification is an umbrella term that contains experimental methods that intend to organize a collection of objects into groups, such as identification, categorization, and recognition. On the other hand, relational measures employ interval or ratio measures to compare between classes of objects, and we focus on that. And this can be done either non-verbally, with known to you pairwise similarity ratings, which is followed by multidimensional scaling and produces perceptual dimensions, what we call the timbre space, or it can be done verbally through either semantic differential, as mentioned before, or the verbal attribute magnitude estimation, which is related to semantic differential, which then needs some sort of dimension reduction, either PCA or factor analysis, to result to a semantic space, or semantic dimensions. So the questions of the first study are the following. Does the language of description influence semantics? Because that's important, because if it does, then the importance of semantics is limited only to the certain language understanding and can be generalized over languages. There wouldn't be any universality. So we're interested in that. So also, we're interested in a more technical question, but it's also important, kind of interesting. Whether semantic variables, the adjectives we use, are linearly related or not, because the most dimension reduction techniques such as factor analysis assume linearity between the variables. And also, of course, about the acoustic coordinates of the semantics dimensions that will be identified. In the second study, well, we weren't initially interested about whether native language influences timbre perception, but we requested to do so by our dear editor, Stephen. and the reviewers, so we did so. We also investigated that issue. And finally, most importantly, we investigated whether the semantic description and perception of the sound, i.e. non-verbal perception through pairwise similarity, correlate at all, have anything in common. In other words, if semantic description is able to convey any type of perceptual information. So we used 23 sound stimuli, musical tones isolated from the McGill University Master Samples Library, and we added sound synthesizer recordings into that group. So just I'll play back some of these sounds. For example, clarinets we have a piano, a saxophone, an Hammond organ, things like that. And we got 41 participants, 41 native Greek and 41 native English speakers to the exact same listening procedure, which was this one. Well, it's not showing very well, but the idea was to provide 30 adjectives, predefined vocabulary, and also give them the opportunity to insert up to three additional terms spontaneously, in case a participant thought that the predefined provided vocabulary wasn't appropriate enough to describe the particular sound. The vocabulary was selected from the literature, these 30 adjectives. And participants were not required to rate the sounds on all 30 adjectives, they just picked the ones that they thought were relevant. So preliminary analysis of the English group data showed that even a simple rank ordering of the transformation of the adjectives of the semantic variables resulted in tighter clustering of the adjectives that implied that there were some nonlinearities in there. So we performed an optimal nonlinear transformation through the categorical PCA module of SPSS. And the result was this. So the original data, so up here, the Greek and the English, you can see that the clustering is not very tight, it's really a mess there, especially in the Greek data. You can't really form any well-defined clusters. But when we applied the transformation, suddenly the picture was more clear, and that helped us proceed with a methodology for data reduction, which I won't go into detail about. You can see the details in the paper if you want. So we performed a factor analysis for both groups, which resulted in 3 dimensions for both of them. We labeled the dimension based on the factorial loadings, which are these numbers here. The higher the loading, with a maximum to 1, the best the association of the variable with a factor is. So based on the adjectives that were highly loaded on the factors, we tried to give a name to label the factors. And these are the semantic spaces. So if you get the factor scores of the sounds on these factors, it's something like that. So left Greek, right English. Just as an example, let's say that the double bass is very highly up in the brilliance depth, for example, dimension here, whereas the Hammond organ is very full, and let's find the harsh one. Yeah, the Gibson guitar, saxophone, the Moog are all rated as quite harsh, whereas the flute is quite soft, for example. So you get an idea. Also, the black symbols represent continuing sounds, and the white symbols impulsive sounds. And as you can see, these are mixed. We cannot differentiate between those percussive and continuous sound just by semantic description, as seen by the two semantic spaces. And this is a scatter plot that shows that the second Greek and the second English dimension in the middle is very strongly correlated between the two languages, whereas there's a fair correlation between the first dimensions, but a weaker one, but still existing between the third dimensions. So we wanted to to use some more general terms to label these three dimensions for each language, but we didn't want these terms to come from the pool of adjectives we've already provided. We wanted something different. And so we, if my memory serves me well, the godfather of these dimensions is Marcus. He was the one that suggested this. And thank you, Marcus, for that. I don't know if you remember that. It happened a few years ago. So we ended up with Luminance-Texture-Mass. Luminance trying to represent the brightness, brilliance, depth dimension. Texture has having to do with whether something is soft or rough, and mass, or whether it's full, thin, or rich, or hollow, or something along these lines. So to sum it up, texture was had highest agreement between the two groups, and mass had the lowest agreement between them. The boundaries between semantics were not always clear, so there was intercorrelation between, for example, luminance and texture, and mass and luminance, if I remember right. So it wasn't like clear-cut concepts by any means. Additionally, the extra terms that we got from free verbalization were also categorized, and we got a lot of terms having to do with temporal evolution description, because we didn't provide any term that had to do with that. There wasn't any term relating to percussiveness or impulsiveness or vibrato or something related to temporal evolution of the sound. And also we got emotional responses, but we didn't also have any emotionally related term in the data sets. And also property of sources, as we only had metallic that represented the property of the source. But, so is semantic description perceptual relevant at all? That was the most important thing to address in the second study that followed. So we did a pairwise similarity rating listening test with the same stimulus, but different participants, again from both linguistic groups, English and Greek. And so we had that. We examined it, so we had four spaces, two semantics, Greek and English, and two perceptual, we call them the MDS derived ones, for both, again, Greek and English. And we examined this relationship between the Greek and English semantic in the first study. And in this study, we tried to examine all the relationships between all these four spaces. So the spaces were this, by the way. Here you can see that there's a clearer differentiation between impulsive sounds, the white ones, and the black ones, and also a clearer grouping of the categories. For example, the wind instruments are represented by triangles, so kind of are grouped. So there's a group of wind instruments here. We could see that in the semantic representation, and also other families of instruments. So we needed to find a way to compare between these spaces, and the first thing we did was to compare configuration similarity between them. So to measure the similarity between the configurations in the space, such as them being solid space defined by swarms of objects. Because there is no single measure of configuration similarity that is globally adequate, we use the combination of two measures, the Tucker's congruence coefficient and the M-squared statistic for Procruste's analysis. So the M-squared is 1 minus R squared. So the lowest it is, the higher the similarity, and the values below 0.75 are showing a great effect, a large effect size. And for the congruence coefficient, values larger than 0.95 represent an excellent matching between spaces. So here actually we've got an excellent matching. It's 0.88 between the Greek and English perceptual, and very, very low m squared, which means that these two spaces are actually equivalent, they're the same, regardless of Greek or English participants. The representation we got through MGS is the same. And you could see that if you looked closely in the timbre spaces. All the other relationships are fair, are above 0.9, which is a fair relationship, not excellent but fair, which means that even semantic representation through description of the sound can capture a significant extent of the variance of the perceptual space. Then we did what Guillaume was telling just before, multiple regression, trying to predict perceptual dimensions from semantic dimensions. So we use the Luminance-Texture-Mass dimensions as predictors for the three MDS dimensions. I won't go into that in detail. I'll show a summing up graph later about these results. And we also extracted acoustic correlates as we did in the first study, but these are more or less very related, so I'm just reporting these ones here. We used the spectral modeling synthesis platform to do that, and we extracted a number of features, and also their mean, median, ketoses, different statistics that brought us about 90 features altogether. And as you can imagine, there was a huge amount of multicollinearity within this set. So we also performed dimension reduction to get the final acoustic dimension that we wanted to model. Features range from spectral content to distribution of harmonic parcels, the energy distribution of harmonic parcels, spectral temporal features, fine structure of the spectrum, harmonic series, which is represented only by harmonicity, and temporal features. So we did a final PCA on the final features. Again, the steps of reduction are detailed in the paper. And we ended up with 4 components, which we called, again, in a similar manner, based on the factor loadings. We called energy distribution of harmonic partial, EDHP, which included features like stimulus 2, 3, normalized spectrosynthroid, spectral spread, and so on. Spectral detail, which included odd even ratio in harmonicity. Spectral temporal variation, which included noisiness, spectral flux, standard deviation of spectrosynthroid, and a temporal / spectrotemporal component that included logitech time, temporal synthroid, and few spectrotemporal features like the mean coefficient of variation. Then again, we did another multiple regression analysis, but this time with acoustic features as predictors for the perceptual dimensions, and also including the F0, which was varying across our stimuli. We had 4 octaves, I think, range of F0, of the same chrome, of course, but ranging 4 octaves. So we want to see that influence as well. And that summarizes the results of the multiple regression. So we have the perceptual dimensions in the middle, and acoustic correlates on the right, and semantics on the left. So we see that the texture semantic dimension is nicely predicting the first perceptual dimension, but it also plays a role in all other dimensions. Whereas Luminance predicts nicely the third perceptual dimension, but we don't have a semantic predictor for the second dimension, where mass could not account for any significant correlation. At the same time, the texture first perceptual dimension is well predicted by a combination of F0, the fundamental frequency, and the energy distribution of harmonic partial, which is omnipresent again. This more or less influences all 3 perceptual dimensions. The second perceptual dimension is predicted by temporal features, which kind of explains why we didn't have any semantic label for that. And the third perceptual dimension is predicted by a combination of energy distribution of the harmonic partials and spectral detail, odd even ratio in harmonicity. So to sum up, we didn't find any effect of timbre perception between English and Greek speaking populations, but the verbal description of timbre qualities, that's an important finding according to me, that could capture some aspects of perceptual organization, perceptual structure. And we're asking ourselves, could it be that perceived dissimilarity between a pair of different timbres might be influenced by a subconscious combined evaluation over several latent semantic constructs? That's something interesting. So if you're asked to rate the dissimilarity between 2 sounds, does the rating come from an integration of some semantic qualities of these sounds? And of course, the acoustic correlates we discussed. That the second bullet point means that the processing of musical sound based on semantic terms would produce a predictable and similar shift of the location of the sounds on the perceptual space, which is important. So finally, we performed a third kind of confirmatory study of the LTM, the Luminance-Texture-Mass model. Okay, I have to speed up. When we used just 6 variables, and participants needed to rate on all of these 6 variables. This came from just picking 2 representative terms that were highly loaded on any of these of the Greek semantic factors, because the experiment was done only for Greek participants. So we then got 2 spaces from that, one through PCA of these 6 factors, and one from converting distances of semantic dimensions to pairwise dissimilarities through a third-order Minkowski distance. And then we compared these 2 spaces with the perceptual space of the second study, which gave us quite good congruous coefficients m squared and RV mod, which is an overall it's a metric for overall dimensional similarity, like an R coefficient for a matrix. You have to imagine that. So we just very quickly these are the clusters of the 2 compact spaces that we call that came. The one that came from MBS, the one came from PCA of the compact set of descriptors, and the perceptual one. You can see that 2 of the clusters are quite correlating with themselves between these 2, the blue and the green one. But in the red one, where for the perceptual space we have a collection of all the impulsive sounds, does not appear in any of the 2 spaces. So here we have some of the impulsive sounds, but a lot other as well, and here only a few. So that, and I'm concluding with this. So we have a Luminance-Texture-Mass description that was not group specific, so that means it generalizes across participants, because we've done this with a different group of people, and constitutes a simple but equally valid task compared to the first study where we had 30 terms. Well, the responses on fullness and richness were less consistent, and this comes across in all studies. It's the weakest semantic dimension of all, the mass dimension. And interestingly, direct pairwise dissimilarity could be predicted up to some extent by dissimilarity derived from indirect semantic assessment only on these 6 dimensions. And the compact spaces, the compact Luminance-Texture-Mass spaces, obviously lack the capability to project the percussive sound quality and better comply with the representation of the perceptual space. So for future works, we should be extending the LTM semantic space with a term or some terms that would be able to provide a measure of temporal evolution, for example, such as percussive as additional semantic components. And with that, I would like to thank my collaborators, Dr. Konstantinos Pastiadis from the Asterios University and Dr. Joshua Rice, my supervisor of my PhD. Thank you very much for listening.
Maybe I can start with a question. In the beginning you showed us the ratings in Greek and in English of those sample sounds, but you only showed the English term, and were, I think, assuming that there is a one-to-one equivalent in the Greek language. And I wonder whether this is not a logical problem, because if you compare the semantic spaces, but assume that there are one-to-one equivalents in certain specific terms.
Translation, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, what if the Greek translation of brightness has a somewhat different meaning than the English translation?
Okay, in the paper there's a table that examines the correlation of 1-by-1 terms, and so here. Most of the terms were very highly correlated with each other, but not all 30. Maybe 20 of them were very highly correlated, so the response that we got. But there were 10 out of 30 or around so that were not so well correlated. So now, I don't know if this is a problem of translation or a problem of something else, but despite that, the correlation between the relationships, not the correlation, the relationship between the 2 semantic spaces was still strong. So this is more like a linguist task, and we're not linguists, unfortunately. But yeah, I take a point. But also the terms were not so complicated themselves. So the translation should be one-to-one in most cases. So to be direct.
More like a comment on the question you asked, Stefan. So I think another parameter might be that some of these terms have a different polysemy in different languages. Take, for example, the French, they have like all these kind of different words to describe sound, whereas, for example, in English, there's basically sound. And then in French studies, actually, on piano verbal descriptions, words like clear, clair, have been found to have at least 3-4 different subtly different meanings. So it's possible that the term bright in Greek has a different type of polysemy than in English. Just as an consideration.
Maybe in the background we can already prepare the next talk and continue the discussion.
So in the studies of Greek English bilinguals labeling colors, there is an advantage in distinguishing different shades of blue because of additional words for blue in Greek. But it only shows up if you're measuring reaction times. So there's a slight improvement. You're faster, more efficient because of that additional word. So if we're, you phrased it as integrating over latent semantics, maybe there's just too much time. And you haven't really told us whether the English speakers were bilingual also. So
You mean if they speak another language as well?
right. So I'm wondering if you forced them by priming them in one language and forced them to respond quickly, if you can think of some of the descriptors that would vary more between the two languages.
That would be a completely different task. If we gave them as much time as they wanted to
Right.
take the most relevant masters.
Right, like a categorization task or something.
Okay, that wouldn't be semantic, would it? If it was a categorization thing. You have to provide very specific categories for them to do quick. Otherwise, it would just be perceptual.
Which predefines it, yeah.
But with this study, we didn't want to be very specific on specific terms. We just wanted to examine whether there was some extent of universality between the languages. And we kind of found that. But despite the fact that some terms were differently maybe perceived or comprehended.
But yeah, that is the overall study. The result from the color studies as well is that there's actually a lot of universality. Also.
One more question.
Maybe one quickly. You mentioned in passing, there's a slide called To Sum Up. You have this intriguing suggestion that maybe semantic categories precede similarity judgment at perceptual level. Seems to me that this is a question of causality, in fact, a little bit. Do you have anything in your data that could
implies that?
evidence to that?
No, I don't think so, no. But we just wonder, like a hypothesis, that maybe when you define the similarity between two sounds, well, what do you rate upon? Think about it, you rate upon source maybe, or type of excitation, but maybe you rate upon some qualities, inner qualities that they have, and maybe you rate brightness differences. And we found that in the confirmatory study, when we only gave that 6 attributes and they took the distances based on the semantics this time, not on the perceptual, and we compared the two spaces, it was quite a good match between the spaces. So I went over it quite quickly.
But it could go both ways.
Sorry?
It's maybe a good match because the semantics are built on the perceptual space instead of...
No, they weren't. There were just 6 arbitrary terms, not arbitrary, but 6 terms. So let's discuss over
Sure.
the yes.
Okay, thank you very much again.